I went home that day after school and I said, hey, Mom, my best friend, BFF forever, he asked me today why I take enzymes, why I take these pills before I eat. And I told him it's because you tell me to. And I was wondering why he doesn't take pills. And this was such a small interaction between my mom and I. But again, it had maybe one of the most profound and long-lasting impacts of anything she said to me. And so when I said, what do I tell him tomorrow when he asks me why I take these pills? Now I see parents even today, they start to sweat. They get really flustered when they have to answer something like this. They do Google searches on the best way to approach broaching the subject of disease with your child. But what my mom did is, in my opinion, the best way to broach the subject. And so when I said, what do I tell Jay tomorrow? She said, you tell him that you have cystic fibrosis. That was it. That's where the talk ended. And, well, I guess as far as cystic fibrosis, that's where it ended. I then asked, okay, well, why? Why do I have cystic fibrosis? Why, again, I don't understand why I have to take the pills and he doesn't. Jay doesn't have cystic fibrosis. And then she then launched into this. She must have named every characteristic known to man. And she said, Ronnie, some kids have buck teeth. Some kids have brown hair. Some kids are fast. Some kids talk back. You do all of those things. But some kids are blonde, and some kids have braces, and some kids have glasses, and some kids are tall, some kids are short, some kids are in wheelchairs. And she was like just overwhelming me with all of these different options that could affect children. And then she said, and some kids have cystic fibrosis. And she made it so normal for me. And I never, ever thought of CF being anything but normal. That Johnny had a limp when he walked, or Susie had a really pretty smile. That's just how I thought of CF, that it was just one more thing that made me me. And so the next day, when Jay asked, why are you taking those pills? I said to him, well, because I have cystic fibrosis. And, I talk to a lot of teens who haven't told their friends about CF. I talk to a lot of parents that haven't told their circle about their child's diagnosis. 2 points on that. The first, if you treat CF like a secret, like something taboo, like something that shouldn't be discussed, you're making a huge mistake. And all you need to do is think about the things in your life that you don't want to discuss with people. Are you proud of them, or are you ashamed of them? And if you treat CF like something you're ashamed of, can you imagine the effect it has on your child that knows CF isn't going away? So now they have a scarlet letter their whole life that they have to wear, but they can't share it with anybody else. That's torture. That is mental torture. And so I encourage you, please, be the first to embrace CF, and then teach your children to embrace CF. Because it's, again, I'm so thankful that my mom didn't make it some big deal and say, oh, don't tell anybody. Or I can't even imagine the shame I would have felt. But I know it exists because I have friends who went through that. And here's the second point. I promise you that you cannot properly take care of cystic fibrosis and have friends or family that don't know about it and still properly take care of it, right? When you go into the hospital, you can only take so many international long-distance trips. When your friends are playing and it's time for treatment, right? You got to hang out with your friends. Treatment has to get ignored, right? Because you don't want the secret known. So your treatment suffers, your care suffers. Those things are mutually exclusive. Taking care of yourself properly with CF and keeping it with a secret simply doesn't exist. Those things can't exist together unless you have no friends. Which, if that, I mean, that's the choice you make, great. But I wouldn't say it's a good one. But so anyway, so back to Jay and the next lunch period. Some kids fear, right? Oh, well, if I tell my friends or some parents, oh, if they find out, what are... I tell Jay, he says, oh, Ronnie, did you ask your mom why you're taking those pills? To which I said, oh, yeah, I have cystic fibrosis. I kid you not, his next sentence was, are you going to eat your banana? As parents, we care so much more about this disease than our kids' friends do. And I can tell you that, literally I've mentored teens and prepared them on how to tell their friends. And it's not hard, right? I don't have some big song and dance. I just simply say it like it is. And another quick story, kid called me up, Ronnie, my friends don't know. I said, okay, so I know you're not taking care of yourself. That's correct. But I just don't know what to say. And I said, next time you cough, next time you have a pill, they're going to ask you. Tell them. 2 days later, he called me. I could tell. He just sounded different. And I'm not making this up. He just sounded like a weight was lifted off. He said he was throwing the football in his backyard with one of his buddies. He started coughing. The buddy said, oh, man, you got a cold? You getting sick? And Caleb said, no, I have this thing called cystic fibrosis. And I said, well, what did your friend say? He said, hey, bro, are you going to throw back the ball? I mean, again, I think that as parents, we get so entrapped with all the what ifs or where does it go from here? And I just would encourage you to just address the now. Keep it simple. They don't need a big definition. If they want a bigger definition, certainly you can get into it. But in my experience, most kids are satisfied with, you have cystic fibrosis. And ta-di-da, go live, go have fun, go play. And I was so thankful that then, that's how my mom started to change, and that's what her focus became. And like I said, again, it literally saved my life, because believe me, we talked some about some of the isolating effects that this community can have because of some of the cross-infection, which I could talk about all day, and I won't. But don't isolate your kid further because of your preconceived notions or because of your agenda for them. You gotta let them live. You gotta let them live. And you gotta start embracing their differences as something really cool, as something, dare I say, that could be lucky. I feel very fortunate to have CF. I feel very blessed by CF. And that comes from not only some of my life experiences, but certainly from the way my mom raised me to think about cystic fibrosis. All right, I won't try to get so long-winded. So the next trick, and it was kind of alluded to in these slides, and the median age of survival in the community. Now, again, let's remember, in my day, that number didn't look so rosy. Certainly when I was born, a median age of survival of 16 didn't look good. So my first point would be, I'm 34. And so these statistics you hear aren't written in stone, and ultimately, they don't mean anything. if I can be frank, or Ronnie, statistics are really good for raising money if they don't paint a rosy picture. And that's what they're primarily used for, and what they have been primarily used for in the CF community. But let's think about how our patients, or how I interpreted that as a child. When I would hear this number, who knows nothing about statistics, what did I think? I thought I was going to die early. But we champion these numbers in the heart of fundraising around our kids, but I don't think we take the time to explain what they really mean and what goes into these numbers. For example, the worst thing you could do is compare my statistics with your children's statistics. Because as we'll learn, I didn't always make the best choices. And pooled into these numbers that we get are people that made even worse choices than me. Yet they're in the same statistical pool. That makes no sense. It has no bearing. However long I live has no bearing on how long your child will live. None at all. And especially, we're looking at people that are born in the 70s, the 80s, and in the early 90s, when there were no CF-specific treatments available. The doctor highlighted Pulmozyme in 1994, I think. I was on that trial. But that was the first one. That was the first CF treatment. So, honestly, I look at people before that time in a very different pool. We were fighting a much different fight. We didn't have any tools made just for us. Yet, I'm in the statistical picture that we paint. People who had even less than I did, less access to medicine. Same statistical picture. People that live out in the boondocks now, right? No fault of their own, don't have the access that some of us that live in cities have. They're in the same pool. Again, that makes no sense. So the only thing we can do is worry about our actions, our number. I want to know, what is the outlook for somebody who gets up every day and puts their health first, who doesn't miss treatments, who goes into the hospital to get a tune-up or does home IVs when they have to and doesn't delay it, who makes good decisions, who eats properly. Some say this person doesn't exist. They may not. But if they did, I want to know that number, because that's what I strive to be. That's what I want to be. That's what I work so hard to get to. And that's what matters. I don't want to compare myself to a dear friend of mine who died at the age of 47, who had, I think the last count was 9 DUIs. He was a heroin addict. He made terrible decisions. He didn't do treatments. But should I be in the same pool as him? No. And that highlights another problem. Is we look at these statistics and we start to say, oh man, so really maybe it doesn't matter what I do, because they're putting this number out there that's kind of the benchmark that hopefully I can get to. And I think the best way it was explained to me, and kind of the image that I keep in my mind, is if you think about the CF community as a big bell curve, and you have people on this side of the bell curve, the extreme, that it doesn't matter what they do every day. They may never, ever miss a treatment. They may do everything right, if that's possible. And unfortunately, they die at a young age. And I know it frustrates the doctors. That happens. Again, I'm not Mr. Sugarcoat. I'll tell you the truth. But the other truth is, that's becoming more and more and more rare. And it's at the end of the bell curve. Then there's people like Kevin, who didn't do anything right. He lived the worst life. It would kill you. With no CF, it would have killed you. Somehow, he made it till 47. So those are those people on this end of the bell curve that don't do anything right. They live a life that, a CF treatment is an anomaly in their lives. And they're into their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, right? And again, they're in the same pool as us. But then what's encouraging is we have the meat of this bell curve. And the meat of this bell curve is the things we do every day, the choices we make, where we put our priorities, what we do affects our health negatively or positively. If you were to ask the doctors, and if they are honest, most of their patients fall into that category. The more they do, the better they feel. The less they do, the worse they feel. And that's the heart of this bell curve in the CF community. And the problem is the way you're brought up, the way you're parented, you could get tricked into thinking you live in this extreme end of the bell curve where it doesn't matter what you do and you're going to die early. And I started to fall for that trick. And because of another, probably my least liked trick that I'll get to. But it becomes such a mental approach, such a mental game. I can tell you the best feeling in the world, in my opinion, as a CF patient, is when I feel a little bit of control. The worst feeling in the world is when I feel out of control. But what I learned, we'll find out, is the harder I worked, the more control I had. When I was living at home and never missed a treatment, not because I chose to, I was forced to do treatments. It wasn't an option. I was sharing with somebody, I challenged my mom a few times on doing treatments. Literally, just a few. Because when she said something would happen as a result of not doing my treatments, it happened. She didn't do idle threats. When I said, Mom, listen, I'm playing video games with Billy. We've put in 6 hours now to get to this level, and there's no way that I can stop now. I know you want me to do treatment. I understand. Please give us a little more time. Okay, Ronnie, you got 10 minutes. Playing 10 minutes later, Mom, you got to be kidding me. I don't think you understand. How am I going to master this game if you keep on cutting it off? And she goes, okay. Next time she came back, she had a pair of scissors. She picked up the power cord, and she said, would you like to do your treatments? And the key is, I know she would have cut the cord. There is no doubt in my mind. So the game stopped, and I did my treatments. Another time I challenged her. She said, listen, if you don't want to do what I'd like you to do, I'm not going to do what you'd like me to do, and that's take you to practice later. I said, yeah, whatever. I didn't make it to practice later. I got suspended for the first half of the game. That was all I needed, because sports were my passion. She found what was very important to me, and as I told somebody yesterday, what was very important to her was my health. And if I started to mess with what was important to her, my life sucked. She made it terrible. Far worse than CF. And that is what worked for me. And I assure you it works for many when we have them under our control. But we'll find out as I got older, as I started making my own decisions, they weren't the best. But I just want to make the point again that statistics are fine. It's certainly encouraging that the median age is continuing to skyrocket up. But do your best to ignore it, because they have nothing to do with your kid. What has to do with your kid are the decisions you make and the decisions he or she makes. And I can assure you, the more right decisions you make, if those far outweigh the wrong ones, then that little magical number is going to look really good. There's no set expiration date on our lives, yet some of us, me included, started to act like that. And that's ultimately what almost got me killed. And so if these numbers ever do come up, again, please educate your children on how they're formed. They can't control what Ronnie in Arizona does, but they can control what they do, and that's going to give them the best shot. Just like anybody else in this room, right? The decisions you make for your health ultimately control your expiration date for most of us. So, doing all right? As I kind of alluded to, when I was living at home, I was a model CF patient. And it wasn't my choosing. Like I said, I was forced to do that. At that point in my life, I was doing 2 treatments a day before school, and when I got home or after practice or after dinner. It didn't matter as long as I got it done. And I was usually going to the hospital. We're talking high school. I was usually going to the hospital 1 to 2 times a year for, at that point, they kind of figured out that the minimum that you'd want to be on IV antibiotics is about 10 days. So generally, I would start in the hospital and then maybe go home and finish it up. I have pictures of me in a Little League baseball game with an IV in my arm up to bat. So it didn't stop me from doing anything that I would normally do. And by the time I got to high school, and again, if I had charts to show, one chart I would show you was, like I mentioned, before my mom popped the bubble and let me live, my lung function kind of had plateaued. When I got involved in sports as a youth around the age of 7, where I would start playing pretty much year-round, year after year, my lung function increased. And then it plateaued late high school, early college, at about 115, 120%. But that's because I was not knowing at the time, but I was doing treatments every day after school by practicing, by going to practice. I was a running back, right? So I ran a lot, and I got hit a lot. So it was a treatment. I coughed so much when I played football. That's how my mom, I don't know if she still to this day knows my jersey number. She said she would look in the huddle and look for the helmet bobbing up and down, because that was me coughing. And that's how it was for basketball, for baseball, for soccer. I would have a great coughing session for 2 to 3 hours every day after school. And again, one thing that I loved about the slides that were shown earlier, right? We saw that it starts with the mucus. I mean, that's where if mucus didn't exist, at least as it relates to the lungs, CF wouldn't be an issue. CF just simply wouldn't exist as it relates to the lungs. The key is the mucus, right? We need to do whatever is necessary to get it out. And that's why we have a wide variety of treatments. And if I could just touch quickly on a question that was asked, the great thing about having this wide variety of treatments is it gives us options. But I can tell you, I've discovered already the best treatment in the world, that it works for everybody, and that's the treatment you'll actually do and do consistently. It doesn't matter what it is, but if you'll do it, if you'll commit to it, that's the best treatment for you. If you can add more to that, awesome. If it makes you cough up mucus, even better. For me, the best treatment growing up was exercise, was sports. Now, did I continue to do CF treatments at home? Absolutely. Again, it wasn't a choice. But there is no doubt That's why my lung function improved. That's why my life improved, was because at a very young age I started to play sports year-round. And by the way, it wasn't from the encouragement of the doctors. When my mom asked, can I enroll Ronnie in football? The doctor said no. And when my mom asked why, thinking it was going to be some technical medical issue, with my solar plexus, if I got hit, I'd instantly die or something, he said, oh, well, because, he has CF. And again, thank you, Mom. I literally got enrolled after that clinic appointment because she was not willing to hold me back from anything because of CF. Her attitude was, in spite of CF, we're going to do everything. And there's no doubt that's why my life has kind of unfolded the way that it has. But then some of the tricks that CF plays, I started falling for. And the first one was when I left my mom's house at the age of 20, thinking I needed all this freedom and things were going to be so much better. I literally didn't realize you had to buy your own toilet paper when I left the house. I thought that was just provided in homes. But I kind of put on this blindfold that I just figured, okay, if I shoot for doing 2 treatments a day, and I generally do that, I'll be able to just kind of skate through life and live the same life that I'm used to. Lung function over 100%, spending minimal days in the hospital. By the way, I would go to the hospital when my lung function dropped below 100%. I was like, oh, I got to get in. But at this point, I'm again out of my mom's house. I had the vest. I certainly wasn't getting the hand pounds, because we got to remember, my mom or my stepdad hand pounded me by hand twice a day, every single day, from the age of 0 to 20. If you can picture, I was a grown man in my underwear sitting on my mom's lap, and she was pounding away while my friends were hanging out on the couch. And I just thank her so much for that, my stepdad so much, because for me, it really, really helped. And she was willing to sacrifice. She is, I don't know her official title. It sounds fancier than secretary, but essentially she's a secretary. And so she's typing all day long. And she got carpal tunnel. But she would still pound me even though it hurt like heck, because she knew it was important. The job she took because it had good insurance. That was her only priority. She was overqualified, but she knew she needed a job that had good insurance, so she took it. I mean, the amount of sacrifices she's made for me are incredible. But anyway, so I get out of the house, and I thought to myself, okay, so I'll just continue doing the same things. I might miss one here or there, but I'll do my best. But I think it's probably more important that I really live life, that I really experience college. And so that's what I did. And I experienced college for 6 years. And it was 6, at that time, I thought, wonderful years. Any college movie you see that shows a typical college guy, that was me. I was that times 100. I lived a very social life. I drank often. My favorite bars in Tucson, for whatever reason, were the most smoke-filled bars in the city. I would go home and cough up blood almost every single Wednesday and Sunday night, because those are the 2 smokiest bars that I like to attend on those nights. Ladies' night, both of them. See, pretty smart. But